It cost me for that test $600.
What? You mean?
So that was just kind of, depressing when you don't have natural light even. I mean, I know you can't go outside, but when I got the notice that there had been a suspected case on the train and I had to go to a centralized quarantine hotel for 14 days. Said, but I'm at home and I have a camera at my door and I can't leave. Can I not just quarantine here? And they said, no, you have, I tried.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another video from Shenzhen, China. Today I have a special different kind. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm going to talk with a good friend of mine. She lives here in China. She's from the UK and she's going to share with us the experience of leaving China and coming back during these pandemic times. Situation everywhere else in the world is kind of going back to normal, but here in China, we're still facing many COVID-19 outbreaks. And that means we're going through lockdowns, we're going through quarantines if we need to travel. And that is one of the reasons why I mainly don't want to leave China in the near future, because later when I want to come back, I need to face this quarantine process that my friend Kirsty went through. So let's go and listen her experience and see what she has to say about it. Okay, thank you so much, Kirsty, for your time. I know you are right now under some special circumstances, so I believe you have some spare time to share with us. How long you've been in China? What are you doing currently here?
I moved to Shenzhen from Austin, Texas back in 2018. Obviously for a year or so, we had freedom to travel before the pandemic. At the end of last year, unfortunately, my father passed away suddenly, so I went back to England to be with my family.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. You decided to make this trip back to the UK, even though all these difficulties were facing foreigners in China to travel and go abroad, you decided to go back.
Yeah, obviously for that reason, I was very determined to make the move, to travel. Big decision, because I knew it was going to be somewhat problematic to come back into China. And with the, 21 days of quarantine, I left not really knowing when I was going to come back. I left Shenzhen on the 23rd of December, said goodbye to my husband and two children, and said, I'll see you soon. I'll see you. Probably the time frame back then was February time, because I figured I'd want to be at least in the UK 3 or 4 weeks to make the quarantine back into China kind of worthwhile. Right. So that was my thought process then.
You already had a return date in mind? You already knew when you're going to
Well, I knew, roughly. Again, I wasn't, you couldn't really book flights that far out because it was kind of uncertain at that time when the exact date would be. After the funeral and after I decided okay, it's now time to kind of look at flights back. I then found out there were no flights for the entire month of February. So I couldn't actually get back until March 15th.
That's the closest available flight you found?
Closest available, most direct way to get back to China. That was the first kind of realization that, okay, I'm going to be away from my family for a little bit longer than I had planned.
I've been following your posts on Instagram. That's the way you've been kind of sharing with the rest of us what you've been through. Yeah. I have to say, I told you before, I'm so shocked, and in the same time I believe it's very admirable, your attitude towards this situation. But we're gonna get there in a second, right? Because I have many people who have contacted me asking me how is the process to come to China. And I've been telling my audience and my subscribers on YouTube, one of the reasons I don't want to go back, I don't want to leave China, is because of this process that you are facing right now, right? They've been asking me how's the process to travel from other countries to China right now, and you are one of the few foreigners, because the other thing, not everyone can leave and come back. Right? I really want to kind of tell everyone the process that you went through. Once you decided to come back, you found the ticket. How was this process? Because I'm not sure if you need to go to a good embassy and get this kind of health codes or the COVID test. How was this process? If you can share some of this experience, please.
Yeah, so that was, a whole process in itself. And once the flight had been booked, and obviously we had plenty of time to plan all the testing and everything that was required to come back. A week prior to travel, you have to have a PCR test, which doesn't have to be at a Chinese embassy approved facility. It can be anywhere. So there was one test 7 days prior to travel, and then 48 hours prior to travel, I had to do a double PCR test. So then that was what I then used for my health declaration code that you then apply for, with a bunch of other paperwork like health monitoring form that you have to take your temperature every day for 7 days, fill out like a travel declaration to say that where you had been within 28 days, I think it is, prior to travel back into China.
You need to go in person to the embassy to send this paperwork?
No. You get the QR code that you scan, and then that goes through a whole form of stuff you have to upload as an image.
Oh, it's all online process. You don't need to go in person.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's all online, and then you get a response whether it's been successful pretty immediately.
Okay.
And actually, the first time I submitted, it came back and said, "Oh, you haven't been successful." I was like, "Oh no, I need my green code to travel," and so I had to go back and resubmit a couple of things that I'd forgotten, and got those soon after that, so it wasn't too stressful.
Once you do this process online, you get a green code. That's the one you need to show like in the airline when you're gonna board a plane?
Yeah, so that for me, I was traveling from Heathrow to Copenhagen to Shanghai, because there were no direct flights from the UK to China. You can't fly directly still. That was, the best route for me was going through Copenhagen. You have to get tested again at Copenhagen Airport and apply for, once you get the paperwork and the result from that, then you have to apply for another health declaration code to then travel the 10 hours to Shanghai.
You mean you need to do another process in Copenhagen where you're going to transfer the
yeah, and that was stressful because a massive queue of people waiting to get tested. It cost me for that test $600.
What? You mean in Copenhagen?
Amazing.
That test? How come? Everybody needs to pay that amount of money to get this test?
Yes.
That is crazy.
Absolutely, you don't have any choice. So you just like, okay, I've just had a test 48 hours ago, but sure, I'll spend $600 and get this test that I, obviously need to get on a plane.
Is it that expensive because they give the results immediately?
I don't know. I mean, it's that expensive because you don't have a choice. I don't know. I think it's very unfair that they can charge that much, but paid that, had a very painful jab up swab up the nose, and was told we'd get the results in about 6 hours, and 5 hours. And I think our flight, we had about a 6-hour layover. Went about just hanging out in the airport, and then it got to the point where we started to board. I still didn't have my results when everybody was boarding. Fortunately, I did. I was in like the last round, and again, I'm there with my phone and trying to get the image that I need to upload to get the health declaration, the green health declaration code that I needed to show to board the plane. I had it eventually, but everybody's like getting on the plane, and I'm like, I'm still trying to get my code.
Then finally you got the chance to board the plane to come back to China finally. May I know which airline you used to fly from Copenhagen to Shanghai?
SAS, Scandinavian Airlines.
As far as you know, there's still not many flights from the rest of the world connecting to China. In the case that you will have missed your flight, you might need to wait like perhaps a week in Copenhagen?
That's the thing, because a lot of these airlines only have the one flight a week or whatever it is that, then you're kind of screwed and you're then stranded in a country that you don't need to be in.
You boarded the plane and then you are on your way to Shanghai, and that's when the big story started. right? You already knew
Yeah.
that you were going to face 14 days quarantine, right? Is it 14 or 21 days when you land in Shanghai?
Well, it's 14 plus 7. You're taken to a hotel and you don't have any say in for the first 14 days.
Did you
we
get
landed
to choose
in
this hotel or the hotel room somehow, or they just assigned the room for you and the hotel?
I asked for an upgrade. I was like, can I get a larger room? And they just, waved me away. It's like, no such luxury.
There's no choice.
Yeah.
So once you landed is Shanghai Hongqiao Airport or Pudong?
It was Pudong.
Pudong Airport.
It was Pudong. There was a process, and I wasn't expecting that. We had to wait on the plane for some time to even get off the plane. People in hazmat suits were down. I could see, out my window, somebody in a hazmat suit came on the plane, and I guess, had to go through various different. We had a form to fill out on the plane that basically just said, yes, we're okay having another test. Like you're going to say no, or you have a choice, but we had to fill in paperwork. So I think somebody came on to take all the paperwork. It was a good probably 30 minutes at least waiting on the plane to just actually disembark the plane. So once we got off, we went through another round of testing, which was pretty quick. It was a very kind of fast process. And then on to getting our bags, and then on to customs. And then once you get to the area where you would normally leave an airport, it was, if you don't live in Shanghai, you go kind of this way. And if you live in Shanghai, you're kind of allocated hotels based on the area you're in.
Was there another foreigner in that flight? Do you reckon if there were more?
Yes.
Foreigners?
Yeah, so I actually had a funny story because he actually was boarded at Copenhagen and had moved his flight again to the next available because he had originally planned on leaving in February but got COVID, so he had to postpone his original flight. It just so happened that we were on the same flight, so that was kind of cool.
So there were only the two of you, the only two foreigners in this flight?
There were a few others, but after getting off the plane, he was the only one I saw. When we were in Copenhagen, and I did see a few other foreigners, but I would say a handful of foreigners that were going to China for the first time or going back. My friend and I were going back.
Yeah, I've heard also that they're not allowing flights to China to come at full capacity. Do you remember if it was like a half full, the airplane, or?
I would say it was pretty full. I was fortunate that I was in business class, which was very nice. I would say it was a pretty full flight.
Once you get the chance to go through customs and go and pick up your luggage, other than the wearing the mask, did they ask you to wear any other kind of protective suit or something like that, or just the mask?
No, just the mask, which I'd been wearing since I left Heathrow. And it's funny because even being at Copenhagen airport, there were so many people that just said, you don't have to wear your mask. It's like, I'm going to China, I'm wearing my mask.
You get your luggage, and then you start, like, they took you, I'm assuming, to like a shuttle bus or something like that, take you to your facility?
Yes, that wait wasn't too bad. We went to an area, waited there for, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 minutes. You load up your own bags on the bottom of the bus, and then you go somewhere. And again, I tried to get an idea of where we were going, but nobody was willing to kind of give me any information.
They don't give you at least like the address or the name of the hotel or anything like that at all? You don't know?
I asked, I said, where are we going? I said it in Chinese, and then I translated it, and they just kind of wave you away.
And when you arrived, they made only one test, right? At the airport.
Yeah, and that's your first test when you arrive in Shanghai, and then we didn't get tested again until we got to the quarantine hotel.
And then you arrived in the hotel. How was this experience?
Kind of as expected. I wasn't expecting like a traditional setup like a hotel. It was very much, people in hazmat suits kind of at the check-in that, you check in, you basically hand a guy in a hazmat suit your WeChat, and you pay, I think it was like about 5,000 RMB for 14 days.
That would be
so
around like
$800 US-ish.
Around, right.
14 days, yeah. So not expensive by any means.
Yeah.
And then we got handed a bag of pills and a thermometer on the bus and a sheet of paper that just had our room numbers written on. So it was very random in terms of, what room you were allocated. All the forms were in Chinese. So I thought I'll need to translate all of these when I'm back in my room. We also got handed dinner as I'm there with my 2.5 suitcases from being in the UK for a couple of months, and I'm trying to navigate a lift and trying to get to my room. It's very much, like plastic sheeting on the floors. There's like a plastic stool outside your door where they'll put all the meals. And then, you shut the door and you're in your room.
The room was just a regular, not so expensive hotel room, I'm assuming.
Well, I actually was able to change room because the first room I was in that room for 6 days, the first room, but there was one small window with no natural light. It faced walls. During the day, I had to have the overhead lights on all day long because otherwise I wouldn't be able to see anything.
Wow.
So that was just kind of, depressing when you don't have natural light even. I mean, I know you can't go outside, but not to have natural light was pretty tough. And I knew that there was a room available. That was also the reason why I pushed, because one time when I went out to collect one of my meals, I was like, oh, there's a room with natural light. I want that room.
These meals, are you able to order or choose what you're going to eat, or how does it work?
No, don't get any say. The only thing I did, because there was a couple of the first meal was lots of bone and skin on the chicken and stuff. And I don't eat a lot of meat anyway, so I just requested a vegetarian meal, and they happily obliged that. So that was good. So I got vegetarian meals after that. The meals were nothing great.
You kind of knew what you were going to face. So did you get prepared in advance, right?
I had.
You brought some stuff with you from the UK.
Which I definitely used a lot of, I needed it.
So that would be one of your advices. If you're coming back to China, you need to face this 14 days or 21 days quarantine. Definitely bring something in your suitcase for this.
I didn't go too crazy. I know I'd been on some WeChat groups that, suggested like a camping stove. And I was like, I'm not bringing, crazy cooking utensils and things like that. I just bought like a thermos mug, like a coffee filter, metal coffee filter to put over my mug so I could have coffee every morning, a metal camping bowl, and then like a cutlery set. That was like the main kind of utensils and bowl and cup that I really used every single day.
Well, about the meals, they have like 3 meals a day, I'm assuming.
Very set times, very early. Again, when you're in quarantine, you don't really want to be getting up at 6:30, 7 a.m. I didn't anyway. I was like, I don't need my days to be longer than they need to be.
Yeah.
So the meal times was like before 7, I think it was like 6:45 for breakfast, 11:45 for lunch, and about 4:45 for dinner, which was very early.
So once these first 6 days passed, you have the chance to move to it was bigger, or you have at least natural light coming in.
It was natural, yeah. And a slightly different setup in that my room had one bed and not 2 smaller beds. I'd say maybe slightly bigger floor space to put my, I'd got like a packable yoga mat, so I had that down to do, exercises, and 2 smaller windows for natural light. It was funny because when I actually got to the room, I couldn't actually see out of the window very well because they were so dirty, but it still opened slightly, and it was a big improvement to not have the lights on all day and have the light coming in from outside.
I'm not sure exactly about the timeline, but I believe by the time you came back to China, we were facing a COVID outbreak here in Shenzhen.
Right, and I think it was the first week, actually. We were in quarantine and people in Shenzhen were in a week's lockdown, so it kind of coincided.
Were you kind of having an idea what was about to come?
No, and that's the thing. Even landing in Shanghai and then what happened subsequently, and I just kind of thought, I hope this isn't going to be, again, I'm going to get out of quarantine and then get back to my home city and then go into a lockdown.
Originally, you were mentally prepared for these 14 days in a regular hotel room, and then you finally finished your 14 days. What was supposed to be the next step after this 14 days quarantine in Shanghai?
You get to pick wherever you want to go, and you can just get a DD and go to your next hotel. Nice in a way. I mean, we just, we were told very exact. It was 3:40 p.m. that we could leave the hotel. went down in the lift and collected our paperwork, and were just free to go to our next hotel. So I had an idea of hotels that would accept you for the +7, like the health monitoring week. So I had booked the Pullman Skyway in Shanghai as my next hotel. And
that's where you were supposed to spend the next 7 days of health monitoring that you are required to do in the same city. You're not allowed to leave Shanghai back to Shenzhen yet?
You can. And you can actually leave. But then that's when it was, so in that second week in the quarantine hotel, you know, what was going on outside of the world in Shanghai, that cases were rising and flights were difficult to come by. So we would book flights and then they would quickly get cancelled. It was to the point where I knew that my next destination would have to just be in a hotel in Shanghai because I couldn't leave the city yet because of the access to flights.
By then, the outbreak in Shenzhen was under control, but then it started happening in Shanghai. So now the problem was not entering Shenzhen, but leaving Shanghai. You were not kind of allowed.
The news was that you had to then, so from leaving Shanghai, you then had to do 14-day quarantine, home quarantine in Shenzhen.
How long you needed to spend in Shanghai? How long did you stay there?
It was purely down to the situation that was happening in Shanghai, and literally one day after I came out of my quarantine, the city went into lockdown. As we all know, the Shanghai lockdown is still happening. So it was a case of realizing that flights weren't an option, and that's when I started looking at trains. It's crazy because there were no domestic flights leaving Shanghai, but you know, people were leaving to go to the US or UK, wherever they could leave.
You could take a flight Shanghai, San Francisco, but not Shanghai, Shenzhen. What about the train? You finally spent a few days in Shanghai because you had no option, and then you get to find a train ticket to Shenzhen.
It's kind of a crazy story, but so I'd left the quarantine hotel on the Wednesday, had 1 day of like freedom and walking around the city a day before the lockdown. The lockdown happened on the Friday. And then, so I was basically in a hotel that was essentially running like a nicer quarantine hotel. There was no restaurant open.
And that's because of the outbreak that was happening in Shanghai in that time, right?
Right. Yeah.
Were you still
so they'd already
able to go around and walk like in the hotel areas at least?
No, you weren't even allowed to do that.
You were still basically extending your quarantine from the previous hotel. You were still quarantined all this time.
Yeah. I had one day of walking around, as I said, between the 14-day quarantine and the lockdown happened. And I made the most of that day. I walked 14,000 steps and just kind of was outside and made the most of it. We had testing. We had a testing on that Friday, and then we had testing on the Monday, I think it was. And then we had the rapid tests delivered to our room that we also had to take those. I was getting excited about a plan that was coming together to leave, as I said, by train on that Wednesday, because I'd already, said goodbye to any possibility of having a flight out of Shanghai. Mm-hmm. And I'd, again, through these WeChat groups, I'd got a name of a driver, because it had to be, during lockdown times, there were only certain cars that were licensed to drive during those times. So it was very, very hard to get transport. But then all of a sudden he sent me a message saying, I can't drive you tomorrow. So what I did then, as I said, can you drive me today to a different hotel? So I actually just switched hotel while I was still in my +7 in a lockdown, left that hotel, packed up in an hour, and then I got him to drive me to a different hotel. There was other people I knew there actually, kind of running more like a traditional hotel without, the spa and the swimming pool and everything open. But it was, you could eat in the restaurant. So I needed a change. I'd already been 6 days in a room. I was like, I need to just leave. So I switched to another hotel.
So this was your third hotel in Shanghai.
So now I'm on the third hotel in Shanghai. Yeah. But it was like, wow, I can actually walk around the hotel and, I have a sense of freedom in terms of not being in a quarantine hotel or so it was a welcome change.
How long did you stay in this third hotel in Shanghai?
So then that was for another 6 nights. And then I eventually got a train to and a car and all of the necessary paperwork I needed to leave, because it was very much the hotel wouldn't let you leave until you had so many things lined up in terms of proof of your travel and kind of like a letter of responsibility of somebody in Shenzhen, because my district wouldn't put something down in writing that I could go back home. So we found another way of...
Just for leaving the hotel or the city, you need to show all these proofs and sign papers.
Just for leaving the hotel,
The station was also kind of complicated to show these codes and papers and so how was the
you just had to show your either your 24-hour test and then do a rapid antigen test. So I was able to go in the station, and there were no trains going apart from the one that I was going on. They were all cancelled.
Did you need to transfer or change a train when you...
No transfer. It was 11 and a half hours, 27 stops. But, at that point, I was like, this is literally my only way to get back to Shenzhen.
Right.
And also that I had a train back as backup booked on the Wednesday and Thursday. So the 2 days after my train. And they were both suspended. So I was like, literally, this is my only chance to get.
So now you get to board the train. What was it full? There were a lot of people coming to Shenzhen. How was the experience?
Yeah, it was, lots of people, I'm sure, in a similar position that just knew that was one of their only chances of getting back to not only Shenzhen, but all the other many stops. Once we got back to Shenzhen, again, a whole process because you're going to quarantine at home. Again, very busy, very chaotic at Shenzhen North train station, but made it to the testing line. Again, lots of waiting. Once you get tested, so you just kind of confirm where you live, give them the address, so then they can contact the district to say that you've arrived, and then the district sends a car and you get taken home.
Because you were coming from Shanghai, I believe you were given kind of a different treatment somehow. Did it take you to a special line that you were coming from?
We were all, everybody who came from Shanghai was, sent to the testing line and then taken to a different area where we had to wait for transport. And by the time I got into the transport had been 3 hours since our train had arrived. But you just have to wait for the transport from the district. It has to be like a special transport.
You cannot leave the station and take a taxi on your own to go back home?
No.
Not at all?
No. So mine was an ambulance with blue flashing lights that picked me up.
I read that on your Instagram. That blew my mind. Like, what? That's crazy. So they took you in an ambulance from the train station to your house.
Yeah. So me and one other lady in the ambulance. I get dropped off first. Relieved. I'm like, finally home. My family had checked into a service department for 2 weeks so that I could quarantine at home alone.
They won't allow you, of course, to do the quarantine with your family.
We could have done it together, but the kids had gone back to school. They'd gone back to campus. I didn't want to have to, be a part of them not doing that. So basically got up to my apartment. All of a sudden there was somebody behind me. I don't know, he just appeared in the next lift, and he was there with a spray bottle and ready to seal up the door and turn the camera on. So the camera, there's a camera sitting outside my door ready to go on. A yellow bin for hazardous waste.
Is it people from Shanghai who will contact your community or your building and letting them know that you will come in, so they prepare all these cameras and all this stuff for the moment when you arrive?
It's actually down to me and my Chinese friends who kind of was helping with all of this situation, contacting the district, letting them know what my travel plan was, when I'd be arriving. So then everything kind of was aligned.
And then you're finally home. You say, okay, even though your family had to move for a couple of weeks, but at least you were finally at home. And then what?
The feeling was amazing. I was like, wow, I can, I'm going to leave my suitcases. I've got 2 weeks to unpack and catch up on laundry. It's going to be amazing. I had bunches of flowers sitting on the dining room table and notes from my kids and my friends' kids. So, I just kind of enjoyed being in my home for a while, took a shower, went to bed. And then I checked my phone and I'd had several missed calls. Like 5. So I thought, this might be, important. And at this time it was 12:30 a.m. So I messaged back saying, I don't speak Chinese, can you text me? And then that's when I got the notice that there had been a suspected case on the train and I had to go to a centralized quarantine hotel for 14 days. So,
oh my gosh.
I mean, in disbelief, because I actually said, but I'm at home and I have a camera at my door and I can't leave. Can I not just quarantine here? And they said, no, I tried pushing back as much as I could. And then I just thought I'm losing a battle here. So I had about an hour to pack. And then actually it ended up being the same ambulance came back to pick me up at 2 a.m.
So how many hours do you actually spend at home when you went back?
By the time, so I got back about 20 to 12, and then I guess it was about an hour later I was getting the phone calls. So 1:45, and then I went downstairs to meet the car about 10 to 2, and they were a bit late. They got there around 2 a.m.
Just a few hours you stay at home. So this home sweet home feeling just lasted for a few hours, and then you have to
few hours.
Back.
Yeah, and I just scrambled to pack because at the time I don't think they actually said it was 14 days. I just assumed it would be 14 days. Yeah, got taken to a hotel in OCT Loft, and couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe I was checking into another quarantine hotel.
Another 14 days quarantine.
For 14 days.
So I'm assuming everybody who was on this train from Shanghai to Shenzhen went through the same path. So they all have to go to centralized quarantine for 14 days, right?
Yeah.
That is the situation here. Even if you're a close contact or a suspected close contact or a close friend of a close contact or something like that, it's just crazy. The contact change how they trace, and they contact you and then they push you to do the quarantine for the safety of the rest. And that's where you are right now? That's where you are today?
I am. Yeah, I have 5 nights left. So get released on Tuesday morning and finally can get home to see my family.
You've been through so much and you are the perfect example of what many people are fearing to face, including me, when leaving and coming back to China. You are such a brave person, and facing all this situation, it's really admirable. Do you have any idea of how many tests in total you've been through? Like you're doing like every day, every 2 days, or you lost account of how many?
In the first quarantine hotel, it was only 4 tests. It was only we had 2 in the first week and 2 in the second week. Here, you're tested every single day for 7 days, and then on the 10th day, and then on the 14th day. So again, I don't really understand the logic, because surely after 4 tests, you're probably not testing positive for COVID.
Especially through all these quarantine that you've been through. Like I haven't been abroad for 2 years. I've been in Shenzhen for the last few weeks, and I still need to do the test every single day because my company is asking me to show the health code every single day. I need to upload my health code on an app every single day. So that is our day-to-day here in China.
And it's scary because now mine, I'm seen as a close contact. My code is red right now. So I'm very much looking forward to that going back to green on Monday.
I've seen some pictures you posted on your Instagram. Your family is visiting you somehow in the distance.
Yes, because there's a corner, right, that I can see from my window that they've gone down to and waved, call me, and then so I've seen them. I've seen them from a distance.
Them in person from the distance. Oh, that is so sweet. Yeah. I've seen those pictures, and that is like, that is so sweet from them that they get to visit you somehow, and then you get to see them. So that's kind of helpful. You have a very lovely family. Once you get released from this quarantine after 5 days, you will have such a beautiful, wonderful time with your family. I really hope it's
Yeah.
like that. So, well, thank you so much, Kirsty, for your
Thank you.
time, for sharing with us all this insight from your experience of coming back to China, all these crazy quarantines, trains, cars, flights that you've taken.
Yeah.
I know you told me you've been writing a blog. If you don't mind sharing that with the audience, I will be happy to share the links so people can get to know more in depth what you've been through or read your stories.
Yeah, it's been very therapeutic for me just to kind of, log everything that's happened and my journey. It's been
absolutely. I'll be happy to share the links. Thank you again so much for your time and hope to see you soon when you get released from quarantine.
See you soon. All right. Thanks so much.
Well, if you can see, the situation is not that easy. If you want to come to China right now, what Kirsty is going through is one of many cases that you might face when you come back to China because of all this super strict quarantine that you have to do once you come from abroad. That was a very interesting story. Kirsty is still in quarantine. After 5 days, she'll be released. She'll get back home and she'll stay with her family. So I really hope these 5 days goes very fast. That was the video for today. Let me know if you have any question about how we're facing all these latest outbreak of COVID-19 here in China. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to subscribe, like, leave the comment, and share the video with other people who you think might be interested in this kind of content. So with that, I'll see you in the next time. Bye-bye.